Hello, this is Nate Fossey. We're going to start off with our a very quick tutorial on getting R installed. In fact, we're going to do this in a few quick steps, three steps in particular. So we'll just scroll down right here. We're going to do three things, and it's only going to take just a few minutes. And I'll take you step by step through the process of getting everything you need to get R installed. First, we're going to install base R, and we're going to go to this link here, which is the R project homepage, and we're going to select and download the RStudio, the R base R package or R software. Second, we're going to download RStudio, which is our interface for using R. It's a more user-friendly way of interacting and using R. You can use base R, but you have to really, if you really want to use it interactively and intuitively, I strongly recommend RStudio, and this is really one of the easiest ways, one of the most intuitive ways of using R, and really understanding the concepts. But it's built upon base R, so we have to really install R first. Then we're going to install RStudio. And finally, we're going to write a very quick script. Just a little bit of, and a script here is just basically a text file or a Word document that tells RStudio that we're going to install a package called Mosaic. Mosaic is actually not just one package or a bundle of commands, you could say, or software. But it is also an integrated set of data sets as well that we use really quite often if we want to get started with R very quickly. So I'm going to show you these three steps, and all of these require you to be, first of all, have a computer that works, that you can install software on. So you have to have administrative capabilities there. You also have to be connected to the internet. So that's basically those are the only two requirements. I'm going to install actually on a PC on a Windows 7 operating system. However, as you'll see when we click on the home page, base R and RStudio are widely compatible across Macintosh and PCs and other kinds of operating systems. If you have any difficulties, just let me know, but you shouldn't have any problem here. The only recommendation that I have here is when we go to the Mosaic package, we want to be sure that we install a version of RStudio that is 3.0 or higher. That just simply means that it's one of the more recent versions of base R. So let's get started. Okay, so as long as we're connected to the internet, which in fact we are, we're going to actually click on this first link, and it'll take us to that first page. In fact, I've done that for you. I'm going to open and show you what I have in my web browser. In my first tab, I have actually the R project homepage. I would bookmark this page. This is really the starting point for both learning R, getting to know R, and also just really understanding some of the other aspects of the R community, really, the R language community. And you can learn quite a bit about the history. But our goal here is simply to download R. Well, where do you see that? Well, right here you see first a description. R is a free software environment for statistical computing and graphics. It compiles and runs on a wide variety of Unix platforms, Windows, and Mac operating systems, Mac OS. To download R, please choose your preferred CRAN mirror. That is step number 1A when we talk about installing base R. And that's what I mean by base R, simply the actual R package. Now, what is a CRAN mirror? Well, a CRAN mirror is simply a location where our binaries, our syntax, our code is compiled. It's a consortium or group of universities and other institutes that are connected to R. I would recommend selecting a CRAN mirror that is closest to your present location. If you're a traveler, try to find something that's equidistant. It shouldn't really matter. However, I would still recommend finding a place that's close to you. So if you notice, I'm scrolling down a little bit. I'm based in Boston on the East Coast, so I'm going to go all the way down to the United States, and you'll see that I probably won't select Berkeley, but I will select, let's see if we can find something that's really close to Boston here. On the East Coast, we got California, we got Tennessee, Ohio, we got Oregon. This is what I've used before. Actually, I've selected on one of the Pennsylvania sites. So let's just go here with Carnegie Mellon. So we'll click here, and then we're going to download R for Windows. So after we've noticed that that's what we did, we first select the CRAN mirror, and then we will pick our download based on our current operating system. As I told you before, I'm using Windows 7 here. Of course, if you're using Linux, if you're using a Macintosh computer, you're going to use that as well. I would ignore the source code. That's more for developers. Of course, there are questions over here, but really we're focusing on how to download and install base R. I'm calling it base R here because it is really the foundation for everything else. Everything that we do in RStudio we can use with R essentially, but RStudio is just a more intuitive platform. So let's go here. We're going to download R for Windows, and here we see base R. This is what you want if you want to install R for the first time. Binaries for base distribution. Exactly. So we want to do this, and then here's the download link right here. Click on this first one, and we'll click on this one. Again, as I mentioned before, you want to just double check to make sure that this is version 3 or more, simply because it's compatible with our Mosaic package. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But for now, let's just get this downloaded, and you'll see this is an exe file, and it is downloading as we speak. While we're doing that, why don't we actually move to our next step, and we're going to download RStudio. So we're not going to install RStudio. We in fact have to download base R before I download RStudio. So just to recap on our step, for step 1, we went to this R project page. We went to the first link to download base R, and then we selected our CRAN mirror, which you should probably select based on your current geographic location of your computer, and then you click on the first link for downloading base R for downloading the first time. So that should be actually base R should be downloaded. Yes, in fact it is. So we're going to move that. I'm going to move that actually into view from my downloads folder, so you'll be able to see actually what it looks like. So we should be able to see that. So here we are. I'll show you what the download icon actually looks like. So I'm going to move our commands out of the way, and you'll just see my empty desktop right now. So there it is. This is what it should look like in your download folder. You don't have to move it to your desktop. You can just actually double click it, and you'll get a menu. And here it asks me to run, and it'll ask me to run, and it'll select language. If you're a native English speaker or you're okay with speaking English, just do that, and just go through the menus here. And you can read this, but this is simply just some basic information on the license. This is actually widely available. It'll give you a place to download. I would select the default location. I use a 64-bit operating system. I would download everything actually. And we don't want to customize the startup options. I would just keep everything to the default. It'll create a program shortcut within your start menu. You don't have to do that, but I would do that. And why don't we create a quick launch icon here. So we're downloading base R, version 3.3.1. Typically, I'd go for the more recent version of R. It's always better to have the most recent one. Sometimes there can be bugs that actually occur with, maybe if it's a week old, if it was just downloaded. I think there might actually be a version 3.3.2 out there available. On the other hand, you probably won't encounter too many problems here. R is an open source development community, and it's relatively error-free based on my experience, just simply because there's so many participants contributing to R. Okay, so here we have the download.exe download installation, the installer rather, that we downloaded from the web page that we have here, the R project web page. What I want to show you is I actually created 2 shortcuts. I would recommend this starting out the first time. Here we have 2 versions. We have a 64-bit version and a different, I'm not sure what that version is, to be honest, but let's just stick with the 64-bit version. I'm opening this up here, and I'm basically showing you what R looks like. In fact, if you notice what it's called, it's because I have a 64-bit operating system, it's letting me open the 64-bit version of R. And this is what R looks like. And in fact, it is a GUI. It's called R GUI, Graphical User Interface is the jargon in computer programming. And you can do whatever you want in R typically. And in fact, there are some ways to upload and download packages using the drop-down menus. I'm not going to go here, but I just want to show this to you briefly just to give you the idea that, well, look, actually, you can download R and you're ready to rock and roll, basically. But, and we're not going to save this workspace image. We can talk about that later. I'm going to delete the installer for now because we don't really need this. We just already have R installed. You can also have it in your drop-down menu. I'm leaving it as a desktop icon. So now that we have R installed, and remember, we wanted to make sure it was at least a version 3.0 or more for the Mosaic package. Now we're going to go download RStudio, and we just simply go to rstudio.com, and I have that up here as well. I have this open as a tab. So when you go to rstudio.com, you'll see that it actually is they have freeware, but they also have pricing. We don't want to buy the priced version of RStudio. In fact, that's not necessary. We want to actually go to this little icon right here and download RStudio. Now, if you look here, there are 4 versions, 4 flavors of RStudio. There's a commercial license, which has a lot of bells and whistles, a lot of cool stuff. We have an RStudio server, which is free. This means that you can actually run RStudio via your web browser. This is what you see right here. No worries. Do not. I would strongly recommend that you actually download only RStudio Desktop. This simply means that you can be disconnected from the internet and you can still use RStudio. You don't have to use it via a web browser. I think it just makes your life a little bit simpler. It's the best way to use it for now, especially when starting out. The commercial desktop, they might provide you from additional support. That's essentially the option here. Of course, I'd recommend supporting RStudio. I think what they're doing is great. But for starting out, I would say you really want RStudio Desktop. You want that free license. And the jargon that they use here is they call it an integrated development environment for R. All this really means is that what we saw before when we looked at base R, it adds a little bit more in terms of showing you what R does, and it provides more drop-down menus. That lets you really see what's going on. So you don't have to be an experienced programmer. You can really start out with the concepts, and it's a lot easier. So let's actually get started. I could talk more about that. So here we have a little bit more description of R. We actually want to go, you can see some of the colorful graphics here. We actually want to go to downloading R. Let's see if we can get here. If we can't see that, then let's see. Oh yeah, here we are. Yes. So if you scroll, so in essence, actually, if we go back to the home page, so this is how we navigate to the download. We want to go download RStudio, and then it'll take us to this link here, right here, and then you look at the free desktop version, the first flavor here, and you want to download this. We're going to download this as an application. Now you can't see this too clearly. I'm going to increase the font here so you can perhaps see it a little bit. I'm going to highlight a little bit. These are the installers. This is what you're looking for. And if you notice, RStudio requires version 2.1. If you don't have R, they give you a link here. We've already done that, however. Now, if you recall, there are requirements for Mosaic as well as R. But of course, if we download at least version 3.0, we're okay. I'd recommend the one I downloaded, 3.2 or higher. Now remember that if you're using a Windows PC, you're probably going to want to double-click this installer. If you're using a Macintosh computer, you're going to use this one. The rest of these platforms you may also be interested in. Don't click any of this. These are not relevant for us right now. We really just want to download the installer. We want to get this RStudio installed on our machine, and in fact, that's what I did. I just clicked that once, and it looks like it's still in the process of downloading. So sometimes you have to be a little bit patient when you download these things. Okay, so here we have RStudio downloaded. I'm going to bring this back to the desktop just so out of the downloads menu, just so you can see what it looks like when it downloads. So there's our RStudio download. So I'm going to actually create a new folder. R downloads. Of course, you don't have to keep these, as I mentioned before, but I just want to show this to you what it looks like right here, so you can sort of see, get an idea of what it looks like. So this is what it should look like here, and there's of course the date, and it's just an application. I'm going to move it out of that downloads folder. In fact, the reason I created this folder is we're going to actually do something later. We're going to do my first R. So we'll say R script. All right, so we're actually creating a little folder there, and that's for our third step, for installing the Mosaic package. For now, let's double click on our installer for RStudio. We're going to run this thing, and you're just going to go through the menu, and it's going to tell you what to do. Choose the start menu folder. Just click basically the defaults, and it shouldn't take too long to install here. So I essentially created a little folder right here that is important for us for a very particular purpose, simply because we're going to write a little bit of script that installs the Mosaic package. Now remember that in addition to having a computer in which you can install software, you also need to have it connected to the internet, at least when you install packages. So I'm going to delete the installer. We don't need this anymore. For ease, I would keep this installer on the desktop. In fact, I'm actually also going to put RStudio on the desktop as an icon. What I'm doing on my computer, I don't know if you can see this, is I'm going to the start menu, and then I'm dragging that icon here. So here we have the RStudio icon. So here we have RStudio and we have base R. Keep in mind, we never really need to use base R here. RStudio runs on base R, but RStudio is really what we want to double click. It's what we want to open every time we use our script. And that's what we're going to do here. Our third step rather, is no longer do we need to look at these links. We're actually going to install and use Mosaic each time we open RStudio, and I'm going to show you how to do this. So let's open RStudio, and this is also a sanity check to make sure that what we're using is actually correct. And it asked me to close this because I had RStudio installed earlier. So this is what R should look like when you first install it. You'll have a few panes here. In another tutorial, I'll actually explain this a little bit more. The point here is our goal is to install the Mosaic package. This is all we're going to do, and we'll do the explaining later. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to click here on the upper left-hand corner, and we're going to click on this. You'll see there's a keyboard shortcut. I'm not going to do any keyboard shortcuts here. I'm just going to create the script, and then I'm going to save this. So I'm going to save as, and then we're going to go to my desktop, and let's see where my desktop is. So I'm actually here I'll show you. I'm navigating to my desktop if I can find it. My script, and then we want to go to our script, and we're going to call this install Mosaic. Or we're going to say this. We're going to call this packages. And it shouldn't ask you what to save it as. Oh, look at this. Okay, so if you look here, this is actually, it saved it to my desktop, but I didn't save it as within my folder. So you should just click the drop-down menu. I want to close this file now. I'm going to file open. I'm going to open the script again here, because I actually just moved it. Oh, we're going to open the file. We're going to open the script. And this is from the desktop, and then we're going to scroll down and go to this R script here, packages. There we go. So here we have an R script. The first thing I want to show you is that if you press Shift and then the number 3, you're going to see this little pound sign. This pound sign is simply a comment. It turns green in your R script file. It means that you can type anything you want. Typically, I use it to demarcate sections. And we want to demarcate in our script, something that we're going to use every single time we start RStudio rather, which is simply the fact that we're going to open, we're going to install packages, and we're going to install the Mosaic package. And remember, you have to be connected to the internet, and you have to make sure a couple of facts. You have to make sure that, first of all, you have to make sure everything's spelled correctly. The second of all, you have to make sure that Mosaic is lowercase and is in parentheses. The next thing you want to do, after you install your package, you want to make sure that you do something that you always have to do, which is call it. You want to tell RStudio that you want to use it. And we want to use the Mosaic essentially every time we use RStudio. Most of the time, we could say. But let's just say all the time, actually. And I'm going to copy and paste this little segment of text just to demarcate where we are. So what are we doing here? The first step, step 1, step 1, install Mosaic. Now, technically, you should only have to do this once. Unless you have a problem, you should only install the package once. Now, telling RStudio to call it or invoke it into your session is something that you always have to do. Call Mosaic package. Now, as I mentioned earlier, you have to ensure that you have at least version version 3.0, greater than version 3.0 for Mosaic, and then for RStudio, version greater than 2, but we should say 3.0 as well because they're both required. If you recall, the version I had was 3.2.1, I believe. So, copy and paste, write this down. You have to run this at least the first time. And this first time, basically what we're doing is I'm going to highlight this little bit of the script. Well, first of all, I saved it. I press Control-S. This is sort of an old habit of mine, but you can just do, here I'm going to change a little bit. I'll press Enter and alter it. You'll see that the script turns red, and I'm going to do File Save. And in fact, you will see this script right here in our little folder here. This is our little packages script. Okay, so here we have everything we need. This is actually step 3 of our getting getting started with RStudio. We're going to install and tell RStudio to use Mosaic each time you open RStudio. In other words, this is install, and then this is telling RStudio that we're going to use it each time we use RStudio. I'm going to put this right on screen so you can see it. So this is step 1 is installing, and you have to be web aware. So we're going to run this. And you'll see some stuff. If you look in the lower left-hand corner, you'll see it's also installing some other stuff. This is red. This is nothing really to be too concerned about. What happens with Mosaic is that it's installing a bunch of other packages as well. So it's installing, for instance, I think ggplot2, some other packages. You shouldn't run into difficulties here, but you notice it's invoking the CRAN source to install this package. So we're actually connecting to the location that I had selected. And if you notice, this is what we're really looking for. We want to make sure that all these packages are successfully installed. And the point I want to make here is that actually Mosaic is a bundle of packages, and we can talk a little bit more about Mosaic. Looks like it's still thinking, and you can tell RStudio is still thinking if there's a little stop sign here. I could click that stop sign and tell RStudio to stop doing what it's doing, but we really want to finish this process. We want to finish this thing out. And if we look here, and we're going to click on packages, we can actually see some of the packages that have been installed. Let's see if we even see color space here. Yeah, there's the color space package, for instance. Stringer, this is a string parsing or language parsing function. Plier is another data management function. ggplot2. So you'll see it's going through quite a few. Mosaic data is also installed. And okay, so here we are. Great. And if you notice, the last comment it has that is printed in the console is actually which version I typed out. And that means nothing here. That's just a comment. But it shows us that we downloaded all of our packages. It shows us our location. But really, we just want to make sure that we install all these packages here. So when we think about Mosaic, it's actually a bundle of packages, which is really cool. It's very convenient. And so we should have Mosaic installed. One thing you should notice is that Mosaic actually, although installed all these packages, including the actual one titled Mosaic, we actually haven't called the Mosaic package. We haven't told RStudio that we want to use it. So, and we have to do this every single time. So here we have to select library, and we're going to run this. Okay. It gives you a little bit of I guess, commentary here. But essentially, this should not be a problem. It says, in fact, it even tells you the following package is masked. Do tally, they're masked. But it says the original behavior of these functions should not be affected by this. But in essence, it required the required packages. Here we are installing this. Now I want to show something to you. First of all, I want to point out that you can see that this package is installed right here, and same with the Mosaic data package. Same with Matrix. In fact, all those packages that it said were attached or installed are actually here. So here we actually are at the starting point where we want to be. Now, before we end, especially if you see this script is red, we want to save what we've done. So let's save this. Well, in fact, we haven't changed anything, but I'm going to unenter this, and I'm going to save this. Well, actually, I'm going to alter this file a little bit so it turns red, the script, and then I'm going to save it. Okay, so we saved our session. I'm going to close this out. And now it asks, do you want to save your image to work to our data? Yeah, you want to save this is essentially like saving a game, essentially, or saving anything that you have in progress. Do you want to save it at its current status? And you can say yes. What this means is, in essence, is next time you open RStudio, you're going to open at the same place where you were before. You're going to open the script. The console will be empty. You'll have to rerun the script, but you'll be at the same spot where you were before. And I want to show this to you. So now we have the packages script, and I'm going to reopen this, and we should, because I saved the session, we should actually open up with the script in the upper left-hand corner and the beginning script here. And you'll see this is exactly as I described it. And if you scroll down to Mosaic, you can also do a keyword search. You'll see that Mosaic is not called. It's not invoked. So right now, every time you open a new session, even if you save everything, first, not everything is saved in the console. Second, you have to tell Mosaic to library, you have to tell RStudio to actually call the library function. I'm going to comment out the install package because you certainly don't need the internet here. You shouldn't. In fact, I'm not going to turn off the internet, but I'm just going to point out that we're not going to install the packages anymore because you only need to do that once. We know this because we can see our package already installed. This means it's on our machine. But what we want to do from now on is tell RStudio that we want to use the Mosaic library. So let's run this and see if we can get this going. I'm going to do a Control S to save. You can also save through the drop-down menu. And I'm going to select this. I'm going to click Run. And you'll see that it's doing exactly what I had done before. So here we have the Mosaic package installed. So Control S. So now, this is exactly, I think we've accomplished the goal. It took us about 30 minutes, but I hope this tells you everything you need to get started with R and RStudio. I installed on this machine, but I showed you the links to get started with R. We basically took 3 steps. We installed base R, we installed RStudio using this link, and we wrote a script to install and then to tell RStudio to use the Mosaic package each time you open RStudio. And after you install it, as I showed you, you can reopen RStudio just by double-clicking the syntax file or the script file and using the library function. And all this is doing is you're just telling RStudio, hey, I want to use this package. And that is really all you need to get started. And best of luck. Thank you very much. And look forward to sharing more information with you about getting started with R. Thank you. Bye-bye.